Stay more comfortable, more concealed, and in the stand longer with Osseo gear. Premium camouflage apparel created for bow hunters by bow hunters. Osseo's revolutionary patented camo patterns and innovative features are designed to keep whitetail bow hunters totally invisible and dead quiet. Elevate your game with Osseo. Visit asiogear.com and take 20% off your purchase with code TRUTH20. Hey folks, I want to take a minute to give you a heads up about Tethered's latest gear. If you're serious about staying mobile in the woods, you've got to check this stuff out. Now, I've been using their Ultra Lock saddle, and now the SD saddle is available. And let me tell you, this thing is dialed. It's ultra light, super adjustable, and most importantly, it's comfortable. You're not going to be shifting around up in the tree wondering if your legs are going to fall asleep. Pair that with the Predator V platform, which is stable, lightweight, and has an angled front edge for comfort. This thing will give you plenty of room for those critical moments when you need to make a move on a deer. And if you're like me and you spend long hours in the tree, you'll appreciate the new Predator CFX platform. Carbon fiber construction that keeps it light, but tough enough to handle whatever you throw at it. This is the kind of gear that makes a difference when you're out there all day. And listen, if you're always juggling your gear like I am, Tethered's got you covered with the Universal Platform Pack. More rigid to make getting your platform in and out easier, and 2 sizes to fit the smaller and larger platforms. Whether you're hunting public land or heading to your favorite spot on the back 40, this setup makes carrying your platform so much easier. So if you're serious about getting in the game this season and hunting smarter, check out Tethered at tethered.com. Their gear will keep you lighter, quieter, and up in a tree longer, which, as we all know, is where the magic happens. Welcome to the Truth from a Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 429. Today I'm joined by my buddy Jace Allen to talk about having a killer mindset and how gratitude is creating success. So stay tuned. All right, everyone. Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you're doing well. Hope you are feeling fine. Hopefully you're getting a chance to at least enjoy the not completely frigid temperatures that we've been having, warming up a little bit. Probably get outside and shoot the bow a little bit today. Haven't had a chance to do that in a little while. Big week for me this week. Actually, the custom longbow that I was having made actually is finished. I think it ships on. So if you guys are listening to this the day it comes out, it'll have shipped on Monday. So I may actually have it by the time this comes out. I might do a video on it when I finally get it and kind of get it set up. But spent the weekend kind of ordering some test arrow kits to build my zero arrow and figure out what arrows I want to use. Kind of going back and forth between Black Eagle, I think they're called vintages. I've been shooting those this past year with the longbow that I had been using, and then looking at some grizzly stick options. So got a test kit from them as well, just to kind of see which arrow setup I prefer for the upcoming season. So super stoked to do that. Probably going to visit my buddy Todd, since he's made way more zero arrows than I have at this point. So probably going to lean on his expertise and pay him a visit and go build some arrows with him. But nonetheless, super stoked to shoot it. The way I had this thing built, and I'll probably do a video or talk about it more whenever I get it and get a chance to shoot it. But the idea behind it was to get something that I enjoy shooting a longbow, but I'm not a tall guy, and so having something that's super long is sometimes a little bit challenging to manipulate, especially in tight quarters and things like that. You know, whether you're in a saddle platform or if you're using some type of small tree stand or whatever. It's because I had used a recurve in the past, and I kind of ditched it because it was just a lot for me to try to manage in the tree. And that was probably like 8 years ago or so. And so then I kind of went exclusively with a compound for a lot of different reasons. Also, I wasn't very proficient with the recurve as well, but it also just gave me some challenges as far as like how long it was and just managing all that while I was in the tree. And so for this setup, I went with something that was smaller, which is cool. Steve from Bushman Bows is making a shorter kind of bow for more of a tactical approach. So it's a 52-inch tactical takedown. It's 50 pounds at my draw length. Going to be a shooter. The way I kind of had it set up was to be really kind of designed and look like open country kind of foliage, you know, because what was the inspiration behind getting it really was wanting to take an animal spot and stock style with a longbow in the plains. And so I kind of have it schemed out to kind of look like that environment. That way I'm a little bit more concealed when I'm in a ghillie jacket hiding the CRP. And then of course it's shorter, so it'll be a little less cumbersome to kind of manage whenever I'm in those kind of close quarters. And so that's kind of the idea behind it. Should get it sometime mid week this week, and then start slinging some arrows and having some fun with it. So, but with that, we're going to go ahead and just jump into today's show. Have a cool show for you guys today. Have my buddy Jace Allen on. You guys know him. You love him. He's been on a couple different times. Jace is just one of those dudes that, I don't even remember exactly how we met several years ago. But the more I get to spend time with him, the more I enjoy it. He's one of the probably one of the most thoughtful and reflective bow hunters that I've met. And he's a younger dude in terms of, all the success that he's had. What we talk a lot about in this episode is, he kind of had this plan, and he kind of details it. So I'm not going to give all the info away, but, had an epiphany, I guess, in his early 20s, and wanted to try to be great at something. And he chose bow hunting, whitetail specifically. Wondered how good could he be. And you very rarely meet people who kind of have those thoughts and ideas and actually, do the work to try to see how far they can push it. And he, told himself he would give himself till, the age of 30 to try to figure it out and see just how far he could take it. Which resonated with me whenever I kind of learned about that, because I did something similar in my 20s, albeit in a different path with music, where I kind of had this epiphany, and it was like, give me till I'm 30 to see how far I can push this thing along. And just kind of go at it with like the blinders on, so to speak. And that's what he's done. And we talk a lot about, the successes that he's had, the failures that he's had, but maybe more importantly, what he kind of learned about himself. And now that he's kind of on the other side of that, and he's getting ready to turn 30, this past year was a big growth year, not just in terms of the tags that he filled and the success that he had. That's almost secondary to what he got personally, and he talks about that in this episode. And of course, we detail a lot of the hunts that he had this year, and kind of how, that mindset shift, if you will, played a large role into the experiences that he had this year, not just from like a process standpoint, but also in terms of filling tags. So with that, we're going to go ahead and just jump into today's show. As always, thank you all for listening. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. Today, I got my buddy on. You know him, you love him, that sexy beast on the other side, Mr. Jace freaking Allen. What's going on, dude?
Not much, just not living the dream, not hunting. But, I'm getting to do, some things like this, which is, do podcasts and, find sheds and whatnot. So, it keeps me occupied.
Right. Yeah, I know you've been on the old trade show circuit a little bit too. I saw you shaking hands and kissing babies there for a little while, weren't you?
Yeah, I was doing that for a little while. I've always wanted to do that great outdoor show there in Pennsylvania. I mean, it just, that seemed like, the pinnacle of all the shows out there. And, and so I wanted to go work that one. Lone Wolf, they asked me if I'd go do that. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. I want to see what that show's all about. And, it didn't disappoint. It was pretty fun. Other than me getting the flu towards the last end of it. But other than that, I liked it.
Yeah, dude, we always kind of joked, and my buddy Chad and I, we'd always joke that anytime, because this is the first year I have not been there in years. I had some work travel and stuff that I wasn't going to be able to make it. And so I was bummed, because it's the one show that I get to just see, like, usually like a bunch of my friends, like that I get to see like once a year, unless I end up hunting with them somewhere or running into them on a hunt somewhere or something like that. So it's like, guys like you and guys like Cody and Joe and Rendell and just, the tethered guys and stuff like that. It's like, I usually just see them at that show, and that's about it. So I was bummed at it. And then of course, like, people who listen to the show that stop by and tell you hunting stories, it's awesome. You know what I mean? You kind of just get to hear what everyone's been up to. But we always kind of joked that show, by the end of that thing, you were going to catch the show crud. Like, it never fails. Like, you spend more than the show crud, and it's just like, it's like the plague. It like damn near kills you.
Oh, dude, it was like, there was so many people sick at that show. Is that what you're talking about? Like, people getting the flu and whatnot?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was awful. I mean, it had, it got like half my team. It got the Osseo team. There was other guys that were just, dying during that thing, and it was show crud. Yeah, I can see why you would call it that.
Right, you should get shirts made up. You know what I mean? Like, The show crud shirts. Like anyone who has the crud should probably wear the shirt so people know like that person's got the crud. You
Yeah,
know, you want to stay clear of that
yeah,
person.
stay
You
clear of
know,
them.
yeah, nice. So you've been picking up some sheds lately, man?
I have picked up one. I have not been actually shed hunting all too much here yet. I usually do, but there's some other life things that unfortunately I gotta take care of. So
Oh yeah, you adulting right now is what you're doing, huh?
yeah, adulting kind of like that. I'm here at my parents' house. There's work down here for me to do, so that's what I'm doing down here. Where I live,
Nice.
where I actually live in Missouri, that's where I go. That's where I actually do all my outdoor activities, shed hunting and whatnot. So I'm just not there right
Mhm.
now, but I'll get back. I'll get back to it probably after the squirrels
Right.
get to all the sheds, but I'll get back there.
Dude, well, I guess the squirrels eat mine completely whole because I never find any. So there's that.
Well, I got a
Uh,
buddy around here. He had a buck that dropped on trail camera, and he went and he found one antler, and he hasn't been concerned about the other side. He's like, "Oh yeah, I still got the other side of that ridge. You go check out. I'll go find it eventually." I was like, "No, you will find pieces or nothing of that shed,
right,
eventually,
right.
because those squirrels are gonna get after it. Unfortunately,
Yeah, I say that because I just literally don't find sheds very often. I'm just not a good shed hunter for whatever reason, you know.
right?
I'm also not in a great shed hunting state necessarily,
Yes,
and I just don't. I also just don't have the patience for it. Like some of my buddies, like my buddy Aaron, he finds a bunch of sheds in Pennsylvania every year. You know, now
hmm
he goes out and walks a ton, and he goes out and walks specifically to find sheds,
right,
right? And my MO is more I'm gonna go do some scouting, and if I happen to stumble across a shed, I'll pick it up.
right. Hmm
If I'm out for a whole day, say I do like an 8 hour day or whatever, I'm out scouting and stuff like that. It's like of that day, you could probably tally up the time I actually spend actually looking for sheds.
Right.
Probably a total of like I'm gonna be generous and give myself a half hour
Yeah.
that I actually like intently look for sheds. You know what I mean? Like when I'm scanning the ground, but that happens in probably like 3 minute spurts. You know what I
Right.
mean? Where I'm like, oh, this looks like a place that looks like a place there could be a shed. Let me look around a little bit.
Right.
That's about the extent of it.
Honestly,
So
I do that a lot too. What was it, 2 years ago or something like that? I decided that I was just gonna go absolutely crazy for, sheds and spring scouting and whatnot. I averaged 12.9 miles per shed, and I think I found 28, 29 sheds, something like that. And yeah,
yeah.
so I'm not that good of a shed hunter either, but sometimes I try. So I've gotten better since I know where to
Right.
actually
I see
go
some of these
look.
guys. Right. Right. Like I was a guy I recently met, this fella Tony from Wisconsin. Dude finds piles of sheds, and not
Mhm.
just like piles of sheds, like magnums. Like I'm watching his Instagram stories, and it's like he's out trapping coyotes and stuff like that. And like in the middle of that, I'd be like, "Hey, look at these 3 sheds I found that are all booner status." I'm like, "What the heck?" I'm
Oh,
like, dude,
jeez.
like he was taking he went out on a trap line and set up a camp to trap coyotes in the spot they was staying. And like when he's leaving camp, I saw a story of him like packing out camp. He's got a pull behind sled with all the sheds in it that he found.
Unreal. Absolutely unreal.
I know. I'm like, dude, I find like one like every other year. You know what I mean? Like that's my going rate. And it's usually just like dumb luck that I stumble across it. You know what I
Right.
mean? So,
Right.
but shit. Well, cool, man. So let's just jump into it, dude. I wanted to have you on because we needed to have a serious talk and have an intervention. No, I'm just kidding. That's not what's happening. No, we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff, man. I always love talking to you. I always love having you on. And one of the reasons is because we were just talking about it a little bit before we started recording, is that you meet people in life that say they want to do stuff, and whether they actually do or not, is kind of up in the air. And I kind of came to this realization probably in my 20s, and it was actually around whether or not I was going to pursue being a musician at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just it's a lesson I passed on to my daughter. And it's a lesson I kind of lived by, from that point, because I was doing a lot of, at that time, just to kind of set the stage, so to speak, I was really interested in pursuing, having a career in music, and, but, when you do that, you, before you start actually doing things, you talk about them a lot. Like you almost kind of like build yourself up to it. You know what I mean? You got to kind of
Mm-hmm.
convince yourself that you're capable, but then there's a point that happens that regardless of what it is, whether it's hunting or music or anything, like rubber has to meet the road.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember having this candid conversation with myself where, you know, I was at a point where I was like, I either need to go after this or I need to kind of like come to the realization that maybe this isn't going to happen,
Yeah.
And I basically told myself, I was like, you either need to be a person who likes to talk about shit, or who likes to do shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like either one is okay.
Right.
Either one is fine, but you have to just be comfortable with like what the outcome is going to be depending on which path you choose.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I was looking around, I was on Instagram doing whatever, and I saw the post you made about a promise you made to yourself in your 20s that you were going to, commit to pursuing hunting seriously throughout your 20s and see how far, like what you could accomplish.
Yeah.
Right. And you're getting ready to leave the decade, so to speak. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you were, yeah, and you were reflecting on that, and it reminded me a lot of like that moment that I had, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought it was really interesting. And you're just one of those guys who, when you commit to something, you commit to something. So, like, take us back to young Jace, right? Whenever you had that conversation with yourself, like, what was going through your mind? Like, what were you thinking of?
What was I thinking of during that time? Well, that's a well, honestly, I did go. It helps. I'm not gonna recommend this, but it helps if you go through something like a really bad breakup during that time. That makes those decisions a lot easier. You're like, all right, well, pretty much anything that I've done up until this point, or it's something that I thought was useful, got thrown right back in my face.
Right.
Not to get too far into all that good stuff, but I was just like, what the heck? I was like, am I gonna do with my life? I like things that are challenging. Obviously, I like the outdoors, and I just got to a point where I'm like, you know what? I was like, there's something here that I'm going to be able to do, that I am going to try my hardest to be, like, in my head. Not that this is all one just big competition, but I'm going to try to be the best in the world, at something.
Mhm.
And
Right.
I like, stories where other people, do that same thing, too, whether it's, you know, rock climbing, or, being a musician, or, being, a teacher, or, whatever it is that is. It's something that fires me up, thinking that, there's not a whole lot of people that are gonna, go out there and just really, really, put in the time and the effort, and, be able to do something in their life and say that honestly, they might have been, one of the best ones, in the world to ever do it. Um,
Mhm.
not saying that I am, but I'm saying I can try. Um,
Right.
so whenever I was, going, through my early 20s, I knew I didn't just want life to be just something that I just kind of, float through and, be, mediocre at, this, and be mediocre at that. I want to be good at something. Like, I want to be really, really good at something. Um, and so that's what, kind of started all this. And, whenever I did go through, that breakup, back in the day, and I was kind of, doing some searching as far as what to do, it was like, you know what if I just really, really, really lean into the deer hunting thing? And, there's all these podcasts and whatnot of, guys that are out there, doing that thing and, being really, successful, trying to be the best that they can be. And, I wasn't, all too different from those guys. I wanted to, go out there and do that same thing. So it just makes for an interesting life,
Yeah. Yeah. I
Trying
mean,
to, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say it's, when you said you wanted to be in the best in the world, like for some people that are listening, I think a lot of people here who are listening to this show probably can understand that, right? Because whenever someone makes that statement, someone might scoff at that.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
and think like, who are you to think that you're going to be the best in the world, right? And it's not that that if you aren't the best in the world that you feel like you've missed the mark. The point, I think, more so is that everyone should set whatever it is, to your point, music, hunting, being a teacher, like whatever it is, you should set lofty goals for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if you don't get them, the work that you do to try, man, you just become so much better at the thing that you're doing. And typically you become a better person out of it.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the real value in it. It's not that, yes, I hit the mark 100%, because very few people do. And a lot of times it's not that you didn't hit your mark per se. It's a lot of times that mark changes over time.
Yeah.
Right. Like the road changes a little bit and what becomes important to you changes a little bit, or maybe not holistically what becomes important, but like a piece of that becomes more important. Right. So maybe deer hunting, I want to be the best in the world. It's like, okay, well then maybe 3 years into it, you're like, it's not so important to me that I become the best in the world at it. It's just that I become well-rounded in every situation, right? Like however it changes, right? Like it could be something like that, right? So when you think back on it, do you feel like you met your goal?
That's an interesting one. I accomplished more than I thought I ever would. One. But two, I've realized that, during this reflection period that it doesn't just stop there. There's something that happens beyond this, which is basically returning, the information that I've gathered, making this a huge part of my life, returning it to other people. That's, I think, I'm starting to think that that's really, really, really what this is all about. If I can go out there and learn all of these things, and then, as much as I, enjoy it, give back information, to the hunting community to where somebody else can enjoy this more for themselves. That's the real value, in this. As far as like me ever hitting a point of where it's like, I've done it, I've made it. That's not really in my nature. It's honestly, for me, it's more like I expect this thing of myself, and then whenever I do accomplish, something, it's more like a relief than it is a joy. That's kind of an odd one. But, so I don't get, I try not to get too caught up in, I'm letting my accomplishments, dictate my happiness. Which, like I said, is a very hard thing for me to do anyways. Just because that's what my nature is. So,
yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I love how like things morphed, and I think they often do when you're setting out to achieve lofty goals. Like somewhere in the middle, it becomes less about you and more about other things.
Right.
And that kind of sounds kind of what you hit a kind of like an inflection point where you, I don't want to speak for you, but it sounds like you hit an inflection point and you were thinking maybe maybe the end goal isn't really the goal. Maybe
Yeah.
the end goal is the contentment that I'm getting, of the process
Hmm.
and being able to share that.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really giving
Yeah.
back. Like I could care less if, A, B, C, or, D person, says, oh, well, they're you know, so and so, type of hunter, or, some of the other careers that we talked about, earlier.
Hmm.
They're, this class of I could care less about that. But what I do find, like at very base value, I do enjoy teaching, and I enjoy giving back. Some of the
Hmm.
stuff that I've been able to acquire over the years. So at least I know that about myself. So like you said, it's more, the goal that I originally thought I had was not going to be, as fulfilling as I thought it might be. There's got to
Hmm.
be
Yeah.
something else.
What's wild, man, is that um so I'm a big wrestling fan. Like I watch
Mm,
college wrestling. Like I watch that more than I watched college football. Put it that way, right?
yeah.
I would watch more college wrestling if it was on longer. It's just a
Mhm,
short season. Um, but so I'm a big Penn State fan, right?
yeah.
And and for people listening to this, bear with me here because we'll get back to hunting in a second. But this is like an analogy that like I see a lot, and it's interesting the way you brought it up because it hit right on it. So I'm a big Penn State wrestling fan, and they've been on a dynastic run where they won 11 or 12 national championships in the past like 13 years, right? Where it's not even
Mhm,
close. Like the second place team in the country is closer to the 10th place team than they are to Penn State.
yeah.
Put it that way,
Yeah.
right? Like they're so far ahead. And they just have a different way about how they train, and everyone's trying to figure out what the secret sauce of Penn State is because they just dominate and they take guys who are just sometimes they're top recruits, sometimes they're not top recruits, and they turn them into champions, right?
Mhm,
And when you hear any of them talk, do an interview or a podcast or whatever, they talk about a couple things consistently. They talk about gratitude, they talk about process, they talk about faith and things of that nature, right? So things that are way bigger than wrestling,
yeah.
right? Are all the
Yeah.
things they kind of talk about.
Mhm,
And when you hear them talk about like the one kid. He was the number one recruit in the country. He's actually from Missouri. His name's Luke Lillidahl. He
mhm,
won a ton of like international stuff. He internationally, he's a phenom, and like I wouldn't be surprised if the kid wins like an Olympic medal at some point in his, or Olympic gold medal at some point in his career.
yeah.
But he's lost 2 matches as a freshman, right? And the losses don't hurt them because when you listen to the guys from Penn State or listen to the coaches talk, they never talk about winning or losing or achieving the goal.
Mhm,
It's always about gratitude, the process, having fun, and just getting better.
yeah.
Like that's what their focus is. And their approach is like if you just focus on those things alone, the winning will happen.
Mhm,
Right.
yep.
And so to bring it back to hunting, like what you kind of went through was that you hit a point, and I would be curious. I mean, you've been a heck of a hunter for a long time, so I don't think that like all of a sudden it's just like, oh, I got better at this. But like, I would be
Right.
curious, like whenever you started realizing that it was less about your achievements and more about the gratitude, the giving back, the process.
Mhm.
Did that also start to coincide with like even more like success as you would,
Yeah.
as people would quote unquote term success?
Yeah. No. Absolutely. I mean, I'd like to pride myself in, the fact that I can usually, go find a brown deer and kill it. But
Mm-hmm.
um, that what you just said didn't really take effect until this last season,
Mm-hmm.
because we'll just take 2022, for example. I went to Kentucky and I killed a very large deer on public land
Mm-hmm.
down there. But there was like even like whenever I shot that deer, like there was hardly a moment we'll just say months after. At a certain point, I was like, where's the happiness? I was like, where's
Mm-hmm.
the, feeling accomplished? Like, what happened? Like, where was that supposed to be? Like, I went out and I, accomplished this phenomenal thing, but I was like, where was the, the looking back and, being happy and smelling the roses and whatnot. And I spent the rest of that year just trying to kill another deer that was, um, somewhere in that caliber, and I ended up with nothing. I got caught up
Mm-hmm.
so much into, basically all the things that, don't matter. What do people think of me? Can I, is this something that I can, um, is this something that, I can, accomplish again and, maybe feel some, sort of sense of, overall accomplishment after that. You might have to remind me of your question here. My mind's kind of,
It's all
um,
good.
but, and then that still affected me into the next year, which was 2000, which was 2023. I was going out there and I realized in 23 that I was not doing the, well, I was still doing it for myself, but there is definitely a difference between being internally motivated and externally motivated. I think a lot of the reason why I do, you know, kind of well is because I'm internally motivated to go out there and do these things. And whenever I'm thinking about all those things, I'm doing it for all the, for all the right reasons. I'm out there, I'm gracious that I get to, spend the time, that I do in the woods. Um, I wake up in the morning and, I'm not thinking about, who's thinking what, on social media or Instagram or Facebook or whatever. Um, I was doing all those things in 2023. So basically I was externally, motivated. It was everything else that was going on, in my life. And I was trying to perform for those reasons. But
Mm-hmm.
after 2023, I had to sit there and think for a long time on why I didn't exactly, enjoy myself as much as I had in the past. And I figured, well, I chalked up most of it to, um, I was being driven by external motivators. I wasn't being driven by, internal, motivators. And then we get to this year here, and I forced myself to do a couple things because I even caught myself going off that path a little bit after I killed the 9.
Mm-hmm.
I took a flip phone. Well, actually, so my regular smartphone, that has all my social media and whatnot on it. It got wet and it wasn't working for a minute, and so I was like, okay, what kind of phone do I get now? And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna get a flip phone. Like, we're gonna see what kind of issues this can solve. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and so I had a flip phone for a couple months straight. I didn't have, access to social media. It kind of sucks because I didn't have a lot of friends' phone numbers. But during that time, I forgot about all of those external motivators that I wasn't liking about myself. And then, the more time I stayed off social media and the more time, I was spending, outside, I was enjoying myself, a lot more. I started being, more, uh, I started having more gratitude towards, just being out there, just being able to, to go out there and, chase these deer around. And I had probably the most phenomenal time I've had, up until I killed the 9. Then there's a little bit of a rough patch, and then after I killed my rifle season deer, from then on until out throughout the end of the season, and I killed my late season Illinois buck. That was it was just freeing. It was just, I was out there doing, doing this because, of all the things that got me, into it, which is, at base value, I do enjoy it, and so,
yeah, dude, that's. It sounds like it kind of lined up,
yeah,
right? With when you had that, and you like you were afraid you weren't going to answer the question, dude. I think you just murdered it.
yeah,
I think that was just like the perfect answer to that, because it sounds like that kind of inflection point was this year of realizing that it was about the gratitude and about the process and about just getting better and
hmm
about why I do it and why I enjoy it. And that's, and loving it, which is why you do it.
right,
Right. Cause it makes it so much easier, to put the work in when you love it. Right.
yeah,
Just going back to the Penn State reference. It's like part of the reason why those dudes are so good is that they only let guys in the program that absolutely love wrestling,
yeah,
like love it, like
yep,
like they love it, like we love bow hunting. You know what I
oh
mean?
yeah,
And so you have no other option but to be good at it.
yep,
It's the same thing with bow hunting. It's like if you love it and you love being out there. Now, time's a limiting factor, right? There's some guys
yes,
that absolutely love it and they just can't get out as often. But what I would say is that those dudes that are limited in their time and they love it, they're as good as they can possibly be
hmm
because they spend the time that they can, and the time that they do spend doing it, they spend loving it.
yep.
If that makes sense,
No, that's absolutely
dude.
makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, I had
dude, that's awesome, man.
I was
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I actually this is a surprise to you, but well, kind of not really, but I have actually done quite a bit of preparing for this podcast, and
Oh,
talking about some of those sort of things is what I have in here.
right.
I got a little bit crazy with my preparation. Um, I got like
Yeah.
I got like 270 lines here of basically just reading material. But anyways, we'll get to that here in a minute.
So yeah, so for in full disclosure, I text Jace the other day and I'm like, "Hey, we haven't chopped it up in a while. Let's chop it up." He's like, "Yeah, that's great." He's like, "What do you want to talk about?" And like in true Clint fashion, I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know. We'll wing it." And I was like, "We'll talk about these three things." And Jace's response back is like, "I'm actually trying to be prepared for these now this year. I think."
I figured I'd try it out and see what I
Right.
see if I like it or not.
Right. That's awesome, dude. No, I love that, dude. That's such a, for one, I wanted to talk about it because I just thought it was kind of a unique approach to things because very few people take that leap in
hmm
anything, whatever it is, Um, and when I saw that again, it reminded me of my own kind of inflection point that I had in my world. And I was just curious about, you kind of answered like some of the follow-up questions I had because I was curious about like what you learned from it, like,
Yeah.
so I mean, I think you found like the inflection point of like, hey, it's about the process, it's about loving what I'm doing, and maybe removing social media. But was there anything like aside from the stuff we've talked about that you learned about yourself through the process that maybe wasn't hunting related, but maybe was more just,
Oh,
Jace related?
other than I can be kind of blockheaded and stupid sometimes, whenever it comes to doing
Yeah.
things. What else did I learn
Yeah, but
about
I
it?
think that happens to anybody though.
Yeah.
Like I know for me, if there's anything I want to be good at, I go through these phases of stuff,
Mm,
right? And it kind of ebbs and flows. And what I've learned about myself, for better or for worse, is like if there's something that I'm an all in or all out guy.
yeah.
I can't be half in. You know what I mean?
Yep.
If I'm half in, it's like I'm miserable.
Mm,
Because in doing that, um, a lot of times I'm not a very good communicator
yeah.
when I do that
Uh,
with others,
yeah.
right? Like I get singularly focused, I get tunnel vision, and it's all about the thing that I'm trying to do and I'm trying to accomplish. And it certainly damages, relationships and stuff like that. And that goes as far back as being in a band and stuff like that. Like that was it. And so everything else was like secondary, right?
Right.
Um, And it's almost like I do it subconsciously, right?
Yeah.
But there's a point that happens where it's like I kind of come out of it,
Mhm.
a little bit, and you start to be a real human again. So I'm not sure if like do you kind of go through a similar thing?
Yeah, I do go through a similar thing. Most it has most to do with like I wish that sometimes I could just be a little more open-minded towards these sort of things. Like, so this is something I've been thinking about, um, which is like I wish that it was in my nature to enjoy hunting with other people more
Oh my
because
god, dude.
uh, I
Yeah.
really really wish I was that way, but I've just learned this about myself that I am just whenever I am out there and I'm actually wanting to hunt and actually wanting to kill something. I'm a solo hunter, and
Hmm.
a lot of I don't know what was making me think of this, but I just wish I had, or I wish I would let myself experience hunting with other people more, because if we get to the end of this life and I have a bunch of selfies out there in the woods, it's like,
Hmm.
man, I wish I would have done that deer camp, with these guys. I wish I would have hunted, with that guy more, um, or
Hmm.
her or whoever. I just
Hmm.
wish I could be like that more, but I don't know how to fix that. Um, so
Yeah.
that's,
It's crazy. It's crazy that you say that because I was literally having a chat about this today a little bit. Um, and that's I'm the same. Um, and part of it is because like most of the stuff I've ever done growing up have, or just in general, my life has been, I've always performed better in a solo environment.
yes.
Um, for whatever reason, like even whenever I was in a band, like the band was challenging for me because I had to rely on other people. But what
Hmm.
ended up happening was I just kind of ran everything.
Yeah.
That's how I solved that. I was like, I'm going to run everything and I'm going to make all the decisions and like no one else really has to. I'll just do that, right? And I just need good players, right? And
Yeah.
they were my bandmates and we wrote songs together and stuff like that. But like all the main decision making, like I primarily kind of took that on.
Hmm.
But I'm the same way with hunting, where it's like I prefer once scouting and stuff like that. Like I'm fine, like
Yeah.
it being like a community kind of thing and stuff like that, like all good. But when and even if it's just like if I don't have a real plan and I'm just like, yeah, cool, I'm gonna hunt, and I don't have like let's say like a target or a real kind of destination of what I'm doing, then it's like I'm a little bit more okay with it. But as
Hmm.
soon as I have like a something I'm trying to accomplish,
Hmm.
then it's like the blinders go on. I want to be by myself. I don't even actually want to talk to people about the
Yeah.
hunt,
Yeah.
like
Same.
because I I feel like I've convinced myself of things that were untrue. I don't think anyone intentionally did it, but it was just like I got other thoughts in my head other than what I had been seeing and what I had scouted and
Yeah.
knew, and it changed my mind,
Hmm.
right?
No,
And I
that
just
has
don't like
happened.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't really like that either. Because
yeah.
it's like I'm out there, hunting a specific deer, and oh god, if I even tried to explain how many times people would ask me, it's like, well, did you get him down yet, or you getting on anything, or something,
Hmm.
which shouldn't bother me as much as it does, but it does.
Hmm.
Um, but it's just like I'm out here, I'm trying to figure out this thing for myself. Like, how do you expect me to explain to you like what's going on? Like, if I could sit here and explain to you, precisely what was going on, then I would have already killed this deer and we would be done with this whole thing. you know, I'm out here trying to figure this out for myself, and then some people asking me, hey, have you, killed them, or had any luck, or whatever. I'm just kind of like, what? If I would have had luck, you would have already known by now, because I would have told you, but I haven't told you, so I
Right.
get,
Yeah. Yeah.
I get kind of odd with it. But anyways,
Yeah. It's like the lack of information is a sign that I either one don't have information or two I don't want to talk about it.
right,
Like,
yeah, and it's a whirlwind
yeah.
in my
Yeah.
head. Yeah, it's an odd one.
Yeah.
I know what you
Yeah,
mean.
it is, because even like my buddies, that I'm close with, I'll use Chad as an example. Like even him, if I'm like, this year is a good example. I was chasing a deer, and um, I would text with Chad once in a while,
Mm-hmm.
and it was almost probably better because he had no context of where I was hunting, or he had been there turkey hunting like a couple years ago with
Yeah.
me. But he hadn't done any scouting there with me and stuff like that. So it wasn't like he had intimate knowledge. So it was more like, this is my thought process. Does it sound like I'm thinking about it correctly?
Yeah.
And that's all he could give me, because he couldn't give me like, well, this sign was over here and this was over here. It was all only based on what he knew from me,
Right.
So that was, and I only did that like, maybe twice, I think, during the whole hunting season or whatever, maybe 3 times or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, otherwise it's like, I'll usually have like one person who I've been with enough, who sees things the same way I see them and has experiences hunting like very similar places as me, and that's about
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yeah.
You the same, similar,
Not really. I just kind
or
of.
even more solitude, huh?
I'm just basically like full on, solitude. I said this on your podcast before, which I still do, believe in this. I probably shouldn't if I want to actually be able to enjoy myself around other people, but like you're not gonna learn, as well, you know, hunting with other people as you are by yourself. If you make a
Yes.
if you make a mistake out there in the woods, if there's another guy with you, then it might not even be true, but you might, convince yourself that it was his fault, that he did that.
Hmm.
If there's nobody else there, there's nobody else to blame but you, and it's your own,
Yeah.
original thoughts and ideas and whatnot. Um, there's nobody to, look back to, and there's nobody to, lean on, besides yourself.
Yeah, I love that,
So
man. Like that is so true, because you got to look at the person in the mirror on that.
right.
That's there's no other way around it. You
Hmm.
made the decision, or you deciphered what you were looking at,
Yep.
wrong
Yep.
or incorrectly, or you made this decision and tried to cut the wind, and you knew better, but you did it anyway. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like one of those types of
Yep.
things.
Hmm.
And I think it's partially why I love solo sports too, like, wrestling or jujitsu. It's because it's you and one other person.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
Like, it ain't the coach's fault. It ain't
Hmm.
your teammate's fault.
Yep.
You know, that dude whooped your ass because he's capable of whooping your ass, and you're incapable of stopping him. You know
Yep.
what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
that's what happens, right? It's the same thing with deer. It's like, you're either capable of killing the deer, or the deer's capable of beating you.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
And so,
So.
but man, yeah. So speaking of killing deer, because when I asked you about the achievement kind of part of things, and um, if you felt like, gratitude was, or that, looking past achievement and more towards like those things that make you feel good,
Hmm.
coincided with, like a good season, or just an uptick in success. And I would say, like you said, yeah, like this season is when you really started kind of embracing that. And dude, like, you had a killer season. Like,
Yeah.
there's no way around it, from October through the end of late season. And we'll get to the late season one. I was super stoked for you on that one,
Yeah.
for a bunch of different reasons. But, you know, so was it the 9 that you killed in October?
Yeah.
Was that the deer?
Yep. That
Okay,
was
so
the.
this is a deer that you've known about for a while, right?
Yeah. I've known about him
And
since.
so,
Well, since he put me in my place in 2022. That's
right, yeah,
whenever
yeah,
I
yeah,
really got interested.
right. So Jace had an epiphany. It was like,
Hmm.
you started vibing out. You got your magic crystals out, and you're like, "Hey, man, I'm all about the adventure now."
Yep.
Right? so, with that kind of new mindset, right, or that kind of like new feeling, you know, what was the hunt like for this? Like, what was the hunt like for this deer? Like, going into it, he put you in your place in years past.
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel like? I mean, I kind of know the answer to this because
Yeah.
I feel like you when you are after a deer, I feel like you can kill him. And it's just a matter of like whether or not it's going to come together or not. Like, it's not a
Yeah.
guarantee, right? But it's like it's that idea that I don't hunt a deer necessarily. If I'm going after a deer, I don't hunt him and thinking I'm not going to kill him. Like
Yeah.
I think I'm going to kill him every time, right?
Right.
So it's not that like did you think that you were going to kill him? But it's was there something this year that maybe felt different than 2022 or whatever the
Mhm.
case was that, kind of made you think, even more so or whatever the case is that, yeah, like I've got this Joker's number, or if I do these things differently this time, like
Mhm.
the Joker's number's up.
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with what I was talking about earlier, me going into the season a lot more calm. Basically,
Hmm.
like the feeling I felt like whenever I walked into, this piece of public was I was like, I don't feel any pressure like as far as like, I have to kill this deer, in like a certain amount of
Hmm.
time. I was like, it's him and it's me. And however long this takes, that's however long it takes. Whenever you can get into a mindset like that, I feel like you become really, really lethal because
Hmm.
like getting burnt out is going to be, less of a thing. You being hard, on yourself, day in, day out, it's like, I got to go in there, I got to kill this deer, and it might be for, some of those external, motivators that we were talking about earlier. But no, that was probably one of the biggest things. And the other thing is that comes from being confident in what I'm doing and confident that I know the area that I'm hunting. I hunted this deer a little bit in 2023, and whenever I went in there then, I was like, I am outmatched and outgunned mostly because he knows this place better than I do. I was like, and if I want to have a chance with this deer, then I need to know it as good as him, if not better. And so during my springtime work in 2023, I literally lived in this place. I learned where basically most every trail was, most every scrape, every, transition line. The thing that got him killed was me being familiar with the tree varieties in there.
Hmm.
That also, butted up to, some of the better bedding areas in that area. That's actually the thing that got him killed. But the overall knowledge of the area that, this deer lives in, and also knowing this deer well enough to know that he lives on this property almost full time. Those are two things that are going to make me extremely confident in going after
Hmm.
a deer, because the moment that season opens, up until the moment that season closes, throughout all those phases, I have access to try to kill this deer, early season, rut, late season. And then because I've been
Hmm.
over this property so much that, kind of going back to what I've done in the past, and I wrote some of this down here. Um, there's a lot to there's a lot to being able to hunt deer and consistently kill mature representative deer, for your area all throughout the season. I actually have some written right here. Careful, don't let me get into this too much because I'll just read the whole thing.
No, do it, man. I'm into it.
All right. So, well, I tell you what, yeah, we're just gonna hop right into this one. And I wrote up top, I said this one got a little wild. So this is kind of reading material. It's not like, read proof or anything. I'm just spitting information
Yeah, yeah,
out there as I'm doing
yeah,
this. So just to preface that a little bit. But I
yeah.
wrote, to me, there's two upper levels of hunting whitetails. There's opportunistic hunting of bucks, or the hunting of non-specific bucks, and then there's hunting specific bucks. There's a jump in between the two when you want to get to that next level of deer. Although some of the time the difficulty, if I can do this here, some of the time the difficulty of hunting that deer doesn't have to do with the deer itself. It's other challenges, such as the amount of access that you actually have to that deer, or a list of other factors. I've spent most of my life being a opportunistic hunter. It was my goal for a long time to be able to consistently kill representative mature bucks no matter what time of year. And I still do that a lot. It is not an easy thing to accomplish. According to the juries, there's 13 different phases of a deer's of a deer season. If 13 isn't in fact accurate, which I would agree somewhere around that number, then that's 13 different tactics to kill a deer. 13 different phases that you are going to have to learn how to kill a mature buck in. So, oh, let's think. So pretty much, um, what was my original thought?
So you had like what you were talking about that was kind of interesting was the I guess like the connection between this deer specifically.
Yeah.
He lived in this piece all year round. And so there was a level of like, I don't want to say comfort, but confidence that you would have the opportunity. Like you didn't have to rush it,
Yes.
right? Because you knew that if it doesn't happen in like early season,
Yes.
it can happen in pre-rut. If it doesn't happen in
Mhm.
pre-rut, there's a chance in rut. If it doesn't happen in rut, it can happen in post-rut. If it doesn't happen in post-rut, it could happen in late season
Right.
because he's going to be there through all those phases,
hmm
right?
And
And so,
And I was gonna say, and I have, brought myself up through my hunting to know how to hunt all those phases. So there's like this mix, hunting a non-specific deer to hunting a specific deer, and I have it wrote down here too. Sometimes those things, you know, overlap. I believe that you need to know how to chase non-specific deer before you start hunting specific deer, and
mhm,
it has to do a lot with learning how to hunt those phases. So
right.
so one
Do you,
thing. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, no, I was just going to say, do you think that was it more important for you as you went through like your evolution, learning how to hunt specific deer? Or do you think it was more beneficial to try to learn how to hunt opportunistic or non-specific deer like during the different phases?
that that is more
That
important than being able to learn how to hunt specific deer, and I actually have it wrote down here.
look at that,
um,
dude. You and I are on the same page.
um, I wrote here, if a guy hops right into hunting specific deer, then I think a guy is going to experience a lot of pain in that process. There's so many things that you need to learn and adjust to before you go after the biggest deer of your life. Everything from being comfortable enough to round deer to be able to make a shot whenever it counts, to learning the phases of a deer's life and the correlating month or week that goes along with it, so you know how and when to target them during that specific time. Most people will never move on to chasing specific deer, but if you learn how to kill bucks all year round, then you've got all but a little bit of the battle won. Some people spend their entire life trying to figure out how to kill deer during 1 month of the year, the rut, and also on one property. And
Right.
Clint, that's a hard thing to do. I've
Yeah.
it, I like I said, I wrote here, that's a hard thing to do. So you don't have to take some of these things to the extremes that I do. but I want to be a breed of hunter that can kill no matter what time of year it is. This is a big undertaking, but if you're willing to work hard, you can get to that point too. I've taken it to some other extremes that we can talk about later, but I think if a guy, so like, I think if a guy learns how to, be as opportunistic as you can, and you learn, all the phases, of a deer's life, as it goes through, a deer season, and you can learn how to kill a deer no matter what time of year, then you've got most of it figured out at that point. And then whenever you start hunting a specific deer, it's like a lot of times, well, I say a lot of times, the hunting specific deer thing is kind of new to me, but like hunting this specific deer isn't like something that's like crazy or like out of the ordinary like way of hunting. You're still hunting deer, and it is still, they aren't going to be, I'm not going to say they aren't going to do something completely out of the ordinary, but it's probably going to be an ordinary. You're just going to have to like run with, let's say that pattern for a little bit longer before you catch up to the deer that, that you want to catch up to. So,
Yeah, because I mean, go ahead.
I was going to say, so for example, this hunt, whenever I walked into this piece, I spent the first day scouting, and immediately right off the bat, I realized that there was a huge mast crop. And so I'm like, okay, which is, white oaks. And so immediately in my head, because I've been over and I've gridded this area, there's 6 or 7 spots in my head that pop up that are white oak groves right up next to some really good bedding. And, a lot of times, these, they don't have to have, a whole bunch of, torn up sign on them. You can kill a big deer on one of these, that isn't torn up. But the first one that I went and hunted, I went up there, and there was some rubs up there. There was some scrapes, and it was, some of that food that was right up next to bay. And I'm like, this is, a good situation. And because I've hunted these deer, and just hunted deer in general, I know this is not going to be something that's like, okay, I can just hunt this once, figure out, whatever deer is going, is, in here doing this, and then leave. It's probably going to take a couple days. So the very first, oak grove that I went to, I sat there for 3 afternoons. This is just after work. And finally, on the 3rd afternoon, the buck that was using that came in, presented a shot opportunity. It was probably a 130-inch 8-pointer or whatever. And I was like, okay, the deer, if I was just being an opportunistic hunter, I would do the same thing, except I would have shot that buck. And,
right.
Instead, it's, okay, I don't shoot that deer, but now I find a pattern that's, similar, and I just run this pattern. And so that just led me to a couple ridges over, a similar situation. And it just so happened that, the second situation that I went in there and, hunted it, that's where the 9 was. And I killed him.
Right. Right.
It's like, my rifle season buck this year. I'm going around, I am looking for, this is in the middle of November now. I am looking for where big sign is. I've done this, a lot. Opening weekend of, rifle season, I basically wake up opening morning, I hit the ground running, I go look, and the first big sign that I find, I try to find that deer, and usually I kill them, partially because, I have a gun in my hands, and, I can do, more stuff like that. But, like, if I was on a specific deer hunt, I wouldn't look for anything different. I would still look for the same thing, except whenever, that buck got killed, whenever he jumped up at 10 yards, I wouldn't have pulled up my gun and shot him. I would have let him go, and then I would have, continued on looking for something that's the same, and kept on running that out until I found that specific deer. So,
Right.
Being able to hunt, all the phases, of a deer's life, I feel like is important because, you might not catch up to them, in, your, first phase of season or second or third or what, however many, you want to say there is. And,
Right.
that's, I mean, I don't know what the heck kind of rabbit hole I just went down, but there you go.
It was a good rabbit hole, man. It was killer, actually. Which of those phases for you? I guess two questions.
Sure.
Which of those phases for you? Which of the phases was the most challenging for you to figure out how to hunt?
Right.
And two, is there a phase in particular where you in, like, when you look in hindsight and you think back, is there a phase in particular that seems to be a sweet spot for you specifically?
Usually my sweet spots are where I have the most experience hunting that phase. So like early season, I spend a lot of time hunting early season because I always have a tag. Opening weekend of, Missouri's rifle season, whenever opening day hits, I get a tag again. The harder spots for me has been areas where I haven't had tags, which is, the week or two, before rifle season, because usually I kill my deer, early season, or sometime, in October, late October, something like that. I have traditionally struggled with the rut, the most. Also really like
it's wild too because a lot of the, I was gonna say it's wild too because a lot of the guys that I know who are like some of the best hunters I know, like the rut is usually like their weak spot. And a lot of times it's like, to your point, they just don't hunt it a lot because a lot of times they're tagged out. So when they're still holding a tag during the rut, they're just not as familiar, and they're just not as, there's obviously a lot more people in the woods. Deer could be anywhere at that point, right? They're a little less predictable and things like that. Which makes it a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, for sure. If I would have spent, the last, however many years I've been hunting now, I would have saved my vacation, I would have hunted the rut, just starting out November the 1st, every single year. Then, that would be, probably one of my sweet spots, but, it's something that I'm working on, because that's also something that I like. I used to do quite a bit of bodybuilding too, and one of those things, constantly working on your weak spots, that's what's going to get you, stronger. That's something that I do, and I realize that's one of my weak points, and it's something I'm trying to get better at. This last year, in me trying to learn, like some of Bobby Worthington tactics and whatnot, I learned the hard way that if you are going to be hunting long range funnels, then the weather has a lot to do with your success in doing so. I was trying to hunt long range funnels whenever it was like 60, 70 degrees, and that's a terrible idea. I can tell you that much.
Nice.
So,
did you, I was just going to ask, like, on that note, did you get a chance to talk to Bobby while he was in Harrisburg at all?
No, apparently. Well, I didn't realize he was there until he was gone. So he was only there for a day, I guess. And he told Joe, he was like, "Hey, Joe, Miles, how's it going? Yeah, I got to get back to the woods." So that was the story I heard.
Sounds about right. Yeah, he's like, this is great and all. Yeah, all these people, this is great. I'm gonna go back to the woods. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much. So no, I didn't get the chance to talk to him. unfortunately, but oh well.
Yeah, it's man. So so you're trying to build up some of your rut tactics or your rut approaches,
Hmm.
right? So
Yeah,
like based on what you learned, like no long term funnels in warm weather. So what's the adjustment for next year outside of like make sure it's colder?
yeah, but well, if you're going to be, hunting those long range funnels, make sure it's colder. If it's warm, pushing closer to those bedding areas, hunt those bedding areas.
Hmm.
Because deer they just aren't, going to be moving that far. Um,
Hmm.
so if you just got to get closer to them. Is the thing. I did eventually run
Yeah.
into a long distance mover. And it was a day that I had pretty good conditions. Um, but yeah, I didn't quite make that one happen. That's a little bit of a lengthy story, but basically I missed two in like 12 hours. No, it was longer than that. Two in 15 hours, something like that. Yeah, the first miss
Dang.
caused the second, so whoops. But
Yep.
no, I was actually realizing some of these things. I was sitting there. I'm on a Missouri managed hunt, and I'm sitting in this funnel, and it's kind of warm, and I'm just like, man, I tell you what, I've been hunting, like this for, going on a pretty good while now, talking about the last, week or two. I was like, and this just isn't really working for me. And, you hear people all the time, well, I don't gun hunt because, gun hunting's easier. Well, yes, it is easier, but to say you don't learn anything from it would be untrue. Because you definitely do
Right.
learn something whenever you have a different weapon in your hand. And I thought to
Hmm.
myself, I was like, if I had a gun in my hand right now, what would I do? I was like, probably the last thing I would be doing is sitting in this tree. I was like, so why don't I act like I have a gun in my hand? Which is pretty
Hmm.
much, what I talked about, my rifle season buck, which I got just a couple of days later doing this thing, which is basically, I am on the move, all day long. You could think of it as one big scout, but in those, I probably got out of my tree at 11 o'clock and I moved, I was pretty much on the move all the way up until dark. Well, in those, couple of hours, what I did was I found where there was a big one hanging out because, in my process of scouting and moving around, I found a really big track. Guess what? Right next to the parking lot. And then I went a little bit further and I found a pretty big rub right there. And I'm just like, okay. Um so I'm like I don't know if this deer is in this patch or not, for sure, but for the last, 30 minutes of today, I'm just gonna sneak my way around this patch. Same thing I would be doing with a gun. Well, here it comes, 5 minutes, before last legal. This buck steps out of this willow patch, and I look up and I'm like, that's probably, you know, it was getting dark. It was cloudy, overcast, misty, so I'm, losing more light because of that also. And I could see what I thought was, G2, G3 end of the main beam, and I'm like, that's probably, 130, 135 inch buck. I was like, that's a pretty good deer right there. And
Hmm.
and then he turned his whole head, and all of a sudden, that G2, G3 turned into his G3, G4. And then I saw the set of G2s that I had on him, and the rest of the main beams, and I'm like, oh my god, that's a giant. And so I went to go put a stalk on this deer, and my mistake is I got greedy. He was too far,
Hmm.
and I shouldn't have ever shot. I shouldn't have even thought about shooting. But anyways, here I was. So my sight, I got 20, 30, 40. on the site, and the whole site housing moves if I want to go past that range. So he's at 55.
Right.
So I dial my sight, 55. I'm like, I can either hold low and he's going to drop into it, or I can hold right onto him and he's either going to take it or, he's going to drop and I'm going to miss him high. I was like, in the moment, I'm like, that's the option I'm going to take. I'm just going to hold right on him and, I'll kill him if he stands there and doesn't move. And I release my shot, and left and right, it looks good, up and down, it's kind of hard to tell at that range, what exactly, but, the arrow's going towards him, and he starts to drop, and I barely touch the top of his back, and the arrow goes skidding off into the great beyond, and the deer goes running off, and I'm just like, wow, you have got to be kidding me. I was like, well, one, my immediate regret was like, I'm stupid. I shouldn't have done that. And I'm just like, well, it's time to head back to Illinois because there's a scrape that I need to be sitting on tomorrow morning in a funnel because it's going to rain all night. And if I've learned anything about scrapes is that whenever that rain quits, you need to be on it. Or on a scrape, or a good community scrape or something like that. So I drive back to Illinois. I climb up in that tree the next morning, and this just old as dirt buck at like 9:30 in the morning comes off this ridge, comes down to the scrape, turns into it 15 yards, and I shoot right over the top of his back. I'm like, what the heck happened? Well, I still had my sight
You didn't
set.
move your sight.
I did not move my sight back. Yeah, so
Man.
I'm just like, wow. I was like, that was, that was something. That was really, really dumb. So now I'm really hating life. But I'm like, whatever. But my reward for missing that deer was I got to sit there and in the really cold for the rest of the day, which was not that fun. And then
Right.
a couple days later, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do that again. What I was doing on my Missouri managed hunt, which is I'm just gonna go crazy. I'm gonna go try to kill be opportunistic and kill a good deer. And I went out and took me till like 2:00, 2:30 in the afternoon, but I killed that buck that day, and that's a property that I've never hunted before.
Well, that was your Illinois buck in the storm in that
No,
snow.
that was my Missouri rifle season buck. So
Oh, okay,
a
okay,
couple
gotcha,
days later, I went back to Missouri, hunted with my family. I've never hunted that property before, but I went out and
gotcha.
I killed that deer. So,
Nice.
yeah.
So then you ended up on your way. You ended up back in Illinois. Now this deer in Illinois. I think we talked about this deer before. Is this the same deer that you and I talked about before?
I doubt it.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was the same deer.
Yeah, there's
that eluded you in Illinois, like in a year previous.
Oh no, I know it. I know a deer.
But if not, I mean, yeah. So, but you knew of this deer previously, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
This Illinois buck.
Yes, I did.
So, what was the story with this one? Like, how long have you known of that deer?
So,
because he was old. He was old as dirt, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's really old. So I first filmed him in the summer of 2020, 2021, one of those two, maybe. Yeah, I think so. He was like 160-inch 8-pointer back then. And this area that I hunt, it is massive. And some of these deer, they just simply die old, because of the type of cover that they have to live in. That's also why I hunt there. I never specifically went after this deer, just because his range was seemingly so huge. But you know, keeping that opportunistic mindset. Whenever, so I was over there hunting in December, and I always get ready um, for just in case we have like a big snowstorm or something like that. Basically, what I'm doing is I'm looking for elevated food. Because if
Hmm.
we actually get the conditions that I want to have, which I have not had in the last couple of years, then these deer are going to be down to food that's elevated, which basically means honeysuckle, greenbrier, corn, beans. It's those four
Hmm.
things, and I can deal with that, especially whenever they're just hitting corn and beans. So
Hmm.
we had this bit. So what I'm wanting to find is I'm wanting to find the where there's a lot of food that Illinois DNR leaves, and this is an opportunistic way of hunting. It just so happened it was a deer that I knew of.
Hmm.
So there was two places on this property where they left a ton of food, and I was previously whenever I went over there before the storm, I watched the whole storm roll through, and it laid 3 inches of sleet on the ground and a half inch of freezing rain. Wow. I was like, you
Hmm.
talk about some really, really good conditions. There is no way that a deer, well, they can, but as far as conservation of energy is concerned, a deer isn't going to dig through the snow to get an acorn. That is way too out of
Right.
whack. They'll starve themselves to death doing it. So they're going to go to easy food
Hmm.
access. So, like I said, I went over there and I found the best food sources that were left on that property. Whenever that storm came in, because there's going to be deer that move. Whenever you get conditions that are as harsh as this, and so. And so I'm looking to find out, what moves into these places, after the storm, gets through. One of them was in this buck's, area. So I was hunting, my other food source, and I saw 14 bucks in one evening, and it was like, I saw like almost 40 deer that evening. I mean, the hunting was just absolutely, phenomenal. All the deer coming out to these food
Man.
sources. There was 3 bucks out there that I wanted to shoot. They were all, between 4 and 5 years old. Almost connected with two of them. In those couple of days, but my buddies, came over, and there's a wedding going on Friday, and it's Wednesday. And one of my buddies goes over to to this other field, which was a bean field, really long ways from where I was. But they went in there that evening and had that buck at 50 yards.
Hmm.
And um, that night we got some trail camera pictures of that buck. And the next day, so Thursday, I got to be at the stupid wedding on Friday. So Thursday, we get a wind switch. We have a south wind. It was previously northwest, and I've killed deer like this previously over there, or in late season, which is pretty much the buck that I want to kill. He is going to do something that's just a little bit different from all the other deer, which is probably he's going to be using his nose, more than all the rest of the deer.
Hmm.
So I set up about 80 yards downwind of where all the deer were coming into this field. And I watched probably, I don't know, 35, 40 deer come down this one single trail out into this bean field. Oh, it was absolutely ridiculous. This is one of the most ridiculous hunts I've ever had in my life. But I set up to where, there's going to be so many deer out here in this field, and there's snow on, the trees are bare. I'm gonna have to set up to where basically, like, whenever that deer comes in, like, I'm not gonna be able to move at all. So there's a ridge that I'm planning on this deer to come off of, and I'm set up, in my tree stand, pretty much facing down this brush line, and the ridge that he's coming off of is straight behind me. And so my plan is set my sticks up on my side of the tree and my tree stand on my side of the tree. That way, whenever he comes up over that ridge and starts looking everywhere, then he's not really going to be able to see me or my sticks or tree stand or anything that's on the opposite side of the tree. And then my plan is to shoot him just off my left side. And that's what happened. I had all those deer come out that trail, and I heard a single deer coming straight from behind me, and I'm like, I know that's him. So I have my bow, my cam sitting up there on my knee, and everything was so incredibly slick, and I'm sitting there, this deer is just standing behind me. I'm like, come on. I'm like, do it. I'm like, do it. You know you want to. Come on. And the next thing I heard was something sliding. And this ridge, it's like, I'm probably like, 25 feet up in a tree, and this ridge is above me still yet. So I hear something sliding, so I turn my head real quick, and this buck is trying to dig into the ground, but he can't. He's sliding all the way down this hill. He's just gets down there to like 25 yards, stops sliding, and he looks left, he looks right, and he just stands there for like 2 or 3 more minutes. And then finally he takes a couple more steps, and he gets behind a little stuff, and I draw, and I shoot him at 25. He ran 43 yards, which was 46 yards away from my tree, and he piled up right there. So
Jeez.
yeah, that's how that hunt went. So it was kind of a specific deer hunt in the sense that there was only one deer in there that I wanted to kill, but it's not like I was after that deer for a really long time. Some of these deer, and I wrote about this too, like, I try to be careful as far as what, if I am trying to choose a specific deer to hunt, I try to be careful as far as what deer I'm picking out, because there is strategy to it. And some of these deer, I feel like the first thing a guy's going to do whenever he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to hunt a specific deer, is he'll just go after the biggest deer that he can find. I did that. Well, I figured out that my window to actually kill that deer might have been a week long. It might have actually been 0 days to actually, kill that deer. There's a buck that I know of that I have 4 years of sheds off of him. I think I have 6 antlers off the deer in total. I know about this deer. I've watched him. I've followed him around for a long time. There is 1 week during the year that you can kill this deer, and it is during late season, where if we have like some really, really bad conditions, snow, which we had this last year. One of my buddies was a lot more interested than I was in the deer, so I let him know, where it was that, he could kill this deer, and he went and took a lengthy shot and didn't end up getting the deer. But it's like, if you were trying to choose that deer specifically to hunt, you would be literally waiting the entire year for that 1 week, opportunity, to get at that deer. And, just kind of like this deer, like that field that I killed him, coming into, like, I doubt that for a lot of that, probably, 99% of the year, you killing him in that field was off the table. You would have been wasting your time. There's a certain set of conditions that got him there. So, and that's how, sometimes, the specific deer hunting thing will go, is there's going to be like a little like week-long window that you have that deer is actually killable. I don't like hunting deer like that. I like hunting deer that are on a property full time, even though that is a very hard thing to find. And especially when you're trying to go after a certain caliber of deer. Um, but pretty much, I have learned that one the very hard way is if you are going to go after a specific deer and like it's going to be your one and only, make sure that you have access to that deer throughout the year.
Right.
Because otherwise you're going to be literally trying to do something that is actually impossible because you just don't have access to that deer. So,
Or you don't have time,
or you
right?
don't have
It's
time.
like,
Yeah, there's that too.
yeah, yeah. It's like his 1 week that he's there. It's like if you don't get the right weather and you don't have the time that 1 week, it's like doing it in a week is hard enough as it is. Even if you
Yeah,
have a good beat on him,
yeah.
you have pretty much every possible factor working against you at
Hmm.
that point. But I think that's a good lesson though, man, because I think you're right. A lot of people just pick out a deer that they want to hunt, and it's like it's the biggest one. I'm going to hunt that one.
Right.
Um, you know, and they go for it because it's the biggest one, as opposed to like, well, is he actually killable or
Right.
not?
Well,
And
I
that was
I did that a couple
kind
years.
of what's that?
I said I did that a couple years. I found, because I can or I'm able to here in Missouri, I do a lot of scouting, and glassing in the
Mhm.
summertime. Well,
Mhm.
for 2021, 2022, and then, um, again in 2024, at least my original early season target, like those deer were like unkillable whenever it came to season. Yet I spent all this time, trying to, pattern them and whatnot, but they were just deer um,
Right.
that literally couldn't be killed just because of where they were. If I knocked on doors, then, maybe I could go get them, but they weren't on
Yeah.
public.
Yeah. It was like the deer I chased this year. Like I knew of him previously and then committed to it this year just because like I finally knew enough about him where I was like, okay, I think I have a chance to actually kill him. I think he's
Hmm.
around long enough in areas that I can hunt
Hmm.
that, you know, it's possible. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And
Yep.
I didn't prior to that because I was like, I don't know enough about him. Like I could be pissing into the wind,
Yep.
for a whole season. And,
Yeah.
and it just wasn't something I was interested in doing. I was like, I don't want to do it unless I know I have a chance. And when I
Hmm.
say I have a chance, it's like he's going to be in areas that I can hunt long enough that I can hunt him, that I have the time to do it,
Yep.
you know?
Yep.
So it's
It's
like,
important.
yeah. So, but man, we've been chopping it up for almost an hour and a half. I want to be sensitive to your time. Make sure you get your beauty sleep and get over that flu that you
Yeah.
got going on there. Yeah. So, but before I let you run out of here, let people know where they can find out more about you and where they can follow along with you, and on devices maybe other than a flip phone.
Right. Well, you can find me on, there's no TikTok here, so don't be looking there. But Instagram.
OnlyFans. He's all over OnlyFans.
Yeah, absolutely. I forgot.
It's
Uh,
all feet pictures and sheds.
yeah, don't ask whose feet they are. Um, but Facebook, Instagram. My name is Jace Allen, JaceAllen. You can just pop in my name to YouTube, and there's some Whitetail Addictions episodes in there. If you throw my name in Spotify, then I've got a lot of podcasts. Quite a few with Clint now. Truth from the Stand. Some other ones that I've done, some podcasts with. But Instagram, you can look up my name or Nature of the Beast. That is my beloved Instagram handle. Even though I'm supposed to change it to the Red Dragon now because that joke actually caught on by accident. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but if you
I
don't,
do
then
not, but I would
good.
like. I would like.
Good.
Awesome, man. Well, dude, I love having you on, brother. One of my favorite things about, I mean, you're a hell of a hunter, and I don't need to tell you that. I've got a lot of respect for what you do and how you do it. And
But one of my favorite things is just like how thoughtful you are about everything and how committed you are to chasing critters, and how kind of reflective you are about it, right? It's not that it just happens and it goes away. Like you spend time thinking about, the seasons past and things that you learn, and it's not just applicable to hunting. It's like, it's applicable to life. And that's like probably my favorite part about it, man. And so you're salt of the earth people. And I'm glad you're a buddy of mine.
Awesome, dude. I appreciate the kind words, and yeah, well, I imagine we'll be on here again, chop it up some more.
Oh, you know it. I'll let you get some time to get your notes together. All right.
Yeah, perfect.
Thanks, buddy.
Yep, thank you.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. And if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And hell, while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there too. I'd be super appreciative if you do that for me. And before I shut this thing down, we need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Osseo Gear, Tethered, and Lathrop & Sons Boot Company. And until next time, we'll see y'all.